stopped. And so the from instruction, this is the starting instruction in any Docker file. It specifies the base image for all the subsequent instructions. And you can use one of the base images that you can find in a public repository, among which the most popular is Docker Hub. Or you can specify your own Docker repository if you're in a corporate environment, for example. And also, you can start from scratch if you're building a very basic Docker example like Hello World. You can use the image, the specific image called Scratch, so it will look like from scratch. And here in my example, I'm using Microsoft's .NET ASP again. I'm sorry. Yes, but that's really weird. I can hear you well. What's wrong with it? Hello? Hello? Something wrong with my microphone.
Really Alexander, you can hear me, right?
Really weird. Yeah, I can hear you well. What's wrong?
But if you talk, I doubt we
yes,
can hear you
yes.
now.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's coming. It's coming now. Say something.
Yes. Hello. Hello.
Okay, now it's good. Yeah.
Is it good? Okay. Where I stopped again. It's really weird.
If your computer has a microphone, you can use your computer if you. I don't know if your computer has.
Yeah, I think right now I'm using my laptop's microphone built in. The sound doesn't come from my headphones right now.
Oh, okay, okay.
Is it good?
Yes.
Okay. Hopefully. Okay, so I was talking about this from instruction. I'm so sorry. And in my example, I used Microsoft's .NET ASP.NET to be specific base image, which is also hosted on Microsoft's repository. Okay, the next instruction is run, and it executes commands that are provided to it, and it creates a new layer on top of the base layer or base image. And the result after running this command will be used as a new layer for subsequent commands. So in our example, I use run to execute apt get update and install all the libraries that I needed for my project. So basically, I installed Linux Debian dependencies. So you can run pretty much any command line utils or programs using this instruction. And the next instruction is CMD. CMD provides default arguments that are executed by the enter point command. So the enter point instruction specifies the program, the executable file that will be run when the Docker container starts, and CMD instruction provides default arguments in addition to the enter point arguments. So you can also override these arguments when you directly run your container via Docker run command from command line. So these CMD arguments are only the default ones and can be overridden by your specific instructions afterwards. The next instruction is expose. It informs Docker that the container listens to a specific port. It also doesn't expose actually your port. In order to do the actual opening of a port, you need to provide this -p flag on Docker run. So this is just your intention, but not the opening of the port itself. The ANV instruction, it's pretty easy to understand. It just sets the environment variable. In my example, I specified an operating system environment variable for building my ASP.NET application, so it was ms build something. And the next instruction is add. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. The add instruction copies new files, directories, and also has additional functionalities such as can add resources from remote URLs. So the syntax is like this. You specify the source and destination. The source path is on your host machine, and the destination will be inside the container. And the next instruction is copy. It's pretty much the same as add, but it doesn't have this additional functionality such as unarchiving archives and handling remote URLs. So it's the add instruction is richer than copy, but the copy instruction is simpler and more efficient, and it's actually recommended if you don't need these advanced features, because it's also more secure to use just plain copy. The next one is entry point. Entry point specifies the executable file and that will be run at the container start. In my example, it's .NET, and so this syntax inside square brackets, it specifies first the executable file and then the first parameter command line argument.
We lost you. Okay, it's good. Good. Now it's good.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear
yes,
me now?
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, something wrong with my connection today. Okay, so this is the executable file, and the second parameter is a command line argument that is provided to this executable file. Volume, by default, Docker containers are stateless, which means they don't preserve the state after stopping. All the state is lost. So it's basically just stored in a volatile memory. And in order to preserve your state, you'll need to use volumes, which kind of like hard drives, virtual hard drives that are mounted at the containers start. So in order to create this volume, you need to specify the mounting point, which is your hosts directory, like this one in my example. Go to my vol. Working directory, instruction sends the working directory, which means the directory in which all the instructions will be performed. For example, where all your files will be copied when you write dot, for example. And this arg instruction defines a variable that is used at build time. It's not used after the build time at runtime. So that's where it differs from a env instruction, which is an environment variable and it is also available at runtime. And in my example, Docker file, I used this arg Debian frontend non-interactive in order to prevent apt get from asking for additional confirmations. So those were just the Docker instructions that you specify in your Docker file. And after you've finished writing your Docker file, you can instantiate an actual container. So first, when you need to build an image, in order to do that, you should use Docker build, specifying the container name, and this -t tag means container name, and this path is optional actually, but if you don't specify the path, Docker will use your current working directory where of your terminal where you run this command. And after the image is built, the image is just a file, so it's not loaded into memory. In order to start its execution, you need to do this docker run command with your container name or tag. And also, it might be useful sometimes to enter inside your running container. And for example, if you want to see some logs that are only available inside your application, sometimes, even though it's not the best practice, of course, from the security perspective, but for debugging purposes, especially on your local machine, if you're just building your Docker application, you can use this interactive mode. When you type docker exec -it and this bin bash after the container name, you will be able to run bash terminal inside the container. So after that, you can run pretty much any commands inside this container, like ls, for example, to see the directory's contents, and also run any executable, or even install new packages with apt-get, for example. So, as I already mentioned, the most popular Docker repository is Docker Hub, and you can push your own containers to Docker Hub. In order to do that, you need to register, sign up for a Docker Hub account. It's free, and all your containers will be publicly available. you can push your container that you just built to Docker Hub. And it's also possible to do private containers, but I think it's limited only one per account, so it's not free. But as an alternative, you can run your own Docker registry on like in your cloud or on premises if you wish. And the more popular option is to use already built containers, and you can do that using this Docker pull command. In this example, I'm pulling a pre-built MongoDB image from Docker Hub, and I can just execute Docker run after this image is downloaded. So this pretty much it. So these are the links to documentation where you can read more details. Can you hear me? Something's wrong with my internet connection. Looks like.
It's okay.
Is it okay? Okay. So you can read for more details here by following this reference. It covers much more details and additional arguments to all these instructions that I just told you about. So it's a very good read, and you can always refer to this documentation. And also this second link goes to Docker Hub registry, where you can find a lot of existing images, like Redis or Postgres, for example. You can just do this Docker pull and use a pre-built Postgres database for your applications. So here you have even more instructions how you can configure your database, like using YAML configuration files to set password or some other behavior for your database, like restarting policy and stuff like that. I think that's it. So if you have any questions,
Yeah,
I'll be happy
so
to answer.
there are, let's see, let's go to the questions. I think, so let's see. Once someone asked, what will be the entry point for Java and Angular? I think it's very specific.
Angular? Yeah, I
Like
think
there has to look at documentation for that.
your Angular application should be hosted somewhere, because it's not self-hosted. So I think you'll need to wrap your Angular application inside some web server, like node.js Express server as a very basic example, or maybe Nginx server, like reverse proxy, which also can feed your static files, because Angular files are just like React, they're static, so they don't have its own execution engine.
So someone else, his name is Larry, asked, what are some good free tier sandbox type environment to experiment and play around?
Well, I'm afraid I won't be able to just come up with some good examples. Probably easier for you to Google for more sandbox environments, but I'm pretty sure there are sandbox environments for Docker. But it's also pretty easy to just experiment on your local machine. If you install Docker, you can type all these commands from the documentation and run them from your terminal and see what happens. I think it's a pretty good and obvious way to experiment with Docker.
Yeah. So another person, Troy, he's asking, so if I pull a Docker file from the repository, such as a post GRE image, can I specifically give that image a certain version of PS Post GRE? Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. You can specify the versions when you're pulling images. I think there are tags for this. You can find, but not here. That's weird. Maybe we can try Mongo, for example. There are usually tags. Yeah, you can see other than latest tag, you can also find a lot of older versions if you need those. You just specify the tag after semicolon. It's not semicolon, it's just colon. So your image name colon version.
So, any more questions? We have a few more minutes left.
Okay, I see another question.
So there was someone said that. So is it a good idea to start containerizing your app? When is a bad idea?
Well, I think it should be a good idea to containerize your app if you want to ship it to production. Containerization itself adds some performance overhead on your local machine, so it's probably not a good idea to use containerization during development stage. But if you're running your app in a cloud, especially in some like microservices architecture, like complex architecture where you interact with other services, with other applications. I think it would be much easier for you if you containerize your application. And also, containerization adds a lot of additional benefits like easier runtime management, like restarts or automatic restarts after your application shut down, stuff like that.
Yeah, I, I will add to that, Alexandra. For those who have not followed us in previous sessions, we already discussed some of these topics in our previous webinars. So I highly suggest you go to our previous meetups and follow the links because it's almost we have 4 or 5 previous webinars related to this topic of Docker. And I remember we discussed these questions. If you remember, Alexandra, it was like it was last 3 webinar we discussed this. So again, I suggest that you go to our previous meetup event, meetup group, and follow the link there. If you already have a recorded session of previous sessions in the meetup, just go there and watch those videos. And also, again, as a reminder, 2 weeks from now, we have another of the last webinar in our series where we talk about microservices versus monolithic structures. And Alexandra is going to talk about what are the situations where you need to use microservices versus traditional monolithic, architectures. So we really hope that you guys are going to join us in 2 weeks from now. And again, for previous recording, just go to Meetup and look at our past event. then you're gonna see all the events that we had, last 5 events with Alexandra. And there's inside each event page, there is a link. If you go to the comment section, there is a link to the video. And then one last point I want to mention is that we also offer training, like live hands-on training, if you want to get what's called Docker certifications. So if you're planning to launch your new career or new job as a DevOps engineer or as a Docker engineer, we highly recommend to get certified with Docker. And Docker has a very good certification program. And if you need assistance with live training, you can contact us through the website that is on the slide, Coding Bootcamps, and we would be happy to give you a training for the Docker certification. So I think, Alexandra, thanks again for your presentation. We have everything. So if there is any additional thought you want to share, Alexandra, before we wrap up?
I also just want to add that the Docker containers are very good at isolation of your applications. They give you a very isolated environment, so your application doesn't interfere with running other applications. For example, if you have multiple applications that use different versions of the same library, it might be a very good idea to isolate your applications from one another, and Docker provides exactly that.
Well, that's a good point. And the thing is that, as always, if any of these participants run into any issues that they require consulting services, they can feel free to contact Alexandra directly on LinkedIn or message him, and he would be happy to help you with your project. So again, that was a good point, Alexandra. And then thanks again, everyone, for joining this webinar. And Alexandra, if you get a chance, just upload the video to Google Drive, and I'm going to add it to our site, and I'm going to share the link with people to watch this session at another time. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for attending.
You can take care of that. Take care.
Have a good one.